One gunshot, a quiet London street, and a nation left stunned. One of Britain's most recognizable TV presenters was killed at her own front door, and more than 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved. Who killed Jill Dando, and why has the truth never fully emerged? On April 26, 1999, Jill Dando arrived at her home on Gowan Avenue in Fulham, West London. She was 37 years old, at the height of her career and one of the most trusted faces on British television. She had come to collect paperwork for the sale of the house. At approximately 11:32 a.m., as she reached for her keys, someone approached from behind. A single shot was fired into her head at point-blank range. She collapsed on the doorstep. Neighbors heard a scream, but no gunshot. One witness reported seeing a man walking calmly away from the scene. Emergency services arrived minutes later. Jill Dando was taken to the hospital, but she died that afternoon. Britain was in shock. A crime presenter had become the victim of a crime herself. Forensic experts identified the bullet as 9mm short caliber. Ballistics suggested it was fired from a modified blank-firing pistol. The gun had likely been altered to discharge live ammunition. This raised questions. Was the killer a professional or an amateur using improvised equipment? Early opinions lead toward an untrained offender, but that view would later be challenged. The Metropolitan Police launched Operation Oxborough. Thousands of people were interviewed. Over 1,000 statements were taken. Investigators explored every possible motive. A stalker, a jealous admirer, retaliation linked to her work on Crimewatch, international political motives. But despite the scale of the inquiry, solid evidence was scarce. Attention eventually turned to Barry George. He lived roughly 500 yards from Jill Dando's home. George had a history of harassment, offenses, and unusual behavior. In his flat, police found thousands of covert photographs of women, images of female TV presenters, newspaper clippings about Jill Dando. He also admitted owning a blank-firing handgun. In 2000, Barry George was charged with murder. At trial in 2001, prosecutors built their case around circumstantial evidence. 2 witnesses identified George as behaving suspiciously near the scene, but the key piece of evidence was forensic. A single microscopic particle of firearm discharge residue found in a coat pocket. Experts testified that the particle was consistent with the type produced by the fatal shot. The prosecution argued George attempted to build an alibi after the murder. In July 2001, the jury returned a major verdict. Barry George was found guilty and sentenced to life imprisonment. Yet doubts emerged almost immediately. The conviction rested heavily on one tiny particle of residue. Legal commentators questioned whether that was enough. Over the following years, scientific understanding of firearm residue evolved. In 2007, the Court of Appeal ruled the residue evidence unreliable. The conviction was quashed. At a retrial in 2008, without the residue evidence, Barry George was acquitted. Legally, he was innocent. After the acquittal, media speculation continued. George later won damages for libel against newspapers that implied his guilt. Meanwhile, police re-examined other theories. A disgruntled Crimewatch subject, a former partner, mistaken identity. None were supported by evidence. The case went cold again. Later cold case reviews challenged early assumptions. Experts suggested the murder may have been a hard contract execution, with the gun pressed directly against the head. The technique can muffle sound and control the shot. This raised a new possibility. Was Jill Dando killed by a trained assassin? Attention returned to international tensions. Weeks before her death, Jill Dando had fronted a BBC appeal for Kosovar Albanian refugees. NATO was bombing Serbian targets at the time. Calls were made to media outlets claiming responsibility, though police treated them cautiously. Intelligence reports later suggested retaliation could not be ruled out. No direct evidence has ever confirmed this theory. More than 25 years later, Jill Dando's murder remains unsolved. No conviction, no final answers, just a quiet street and a question that still echoes across Britain. Was it obsession, mistaken identity, or something far more calculated? What do you think happened? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that still refuse to be forgotten.